Fresh and Buds.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all my buds, as always. And I'm joined by a bud today, all the way from the Southern Hemisphere, Mr. John. You know him as Fluke and Box. How are you doing, buddy?
Fantastic.
Yeah, doing good. It's a little early there for you, and I appreciate you coming on. And you know, these time zones are. I always get confused. So, but I'm glad that we actually got it together and we're doing it. So, we got a great show for you all today. I want to talk a little bit about Fluke and Box and Funder and all the fun things that John has going on, and then we're gonna just talk a little bit about Outsiders because Outsiders has been announced, and we got some listener questions as well. But before we do that, I do want to shout out to the Patreon, which you can find in the show notes. Helps keep the lights on, the mics hot. Some nice bonuses in there for like anybody who joins. Bonus eps, you get a little Romping Club membership card, which also gives you access to a Patreon only channel in the Buds Discord, which the Buds Discord is also something I should shout out. That is where you can hang out with all the other buds. It is free to join, obviously, and we have a lot of fun in there. And you can also submit listener questions and stuff like that, which is where we got the listener questions for today. And I also want to shout out the Bud Rush Bellow, the other podcast that I do with Mr. Viz Gary, the the waifu visceri pillow guy. We have a lot of fun over there. That one's live. It's on YouTube. So if you're listening to this on YouTube right now, give us a little like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and then check out the Bud Rush Bellow as well. The VODs are always up on that, and we typically go on at 9:30 Eastern on Wednesdays. So, but without further ado, let's get into the podcast. I'm joined by John here. How are you today, my friend?
I'm great. I love talking about Flesh and Blood and two people that play Flesh and Blood. So this is my this is the best start to my day.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. This is I think in a lot of ways we're kindred spirits. We met each other in Jersey. I
did.
enjoyed talking to you, and the one thing I picked up initially right away was you weren't afraid to joke around, and that's what I love. And I was like, okay, I can vibe with this guy, and I'm glad we finally got you on the podcast. So I want to get to know a little bit about the man behind the box, right? When did Flesh and Blood come into your life?
July 2021. I know because it was my birthday, and I was planning to fly to a city called Cairns, which is I'm sort of in the western midpoint of Australia. This is in the far north. For my birthday, and like a week before, like I had tickets booked, and a week before they did a snap lockdown for COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get my tickets refunded. That's why I remember, because I used that money to buy. I was, been watching Rudy talk about Flesh and Blood, and I'm like, well, I'm stuck at home. Who knows how long for? The first lockdown was like 6 months, so I'm like, looked for a Crucible First Edition box, found one for like 1,500 US retail on their website. I didn't price check, but that's how much money I had from the ticket refund anyway. So I walked over and I bought it and I walked home. And Shiana Pack 1. I was like, ooh. Yeah, I know. It's a good way to get someone in the game. Make sure they hit. God. Yeah, that was that. That's how I started. Pure collecting, speculative investment type stuff. Like I wasn't planning to play or make content, nothing. I just literally Rudy's marketing worked. That's all it was.
And okay, so you buy this first edition Crucible box. You open the Shiana. Awesome. I bet you were ecstatic. And
oh yeah.
Were you into any other TCGs prior? Obviously, I know Rudy does some TCG content, so you must have at least known about some TCG stuff.
So there's like a bit of nuance to the story. I watch Rudy because how do I explain this? I like listening to people I perceive as smarter than myself. And his life advice and the collecting. So I've never made money in collectibles. I still don't do it for money. It's a hobby, but I find it fascinating that this guy clearly makes a decent income, a decent living, with games, and it's not just cardboard. He collects old video games as well. He collects comics, I believe. He collects a whole bunch of stuff. He's a rich nerd, and I like watching him. I like his humor. I like that he jokes around. I don't take him seriously. That's why I watch him. Also, and it's like second monitor type viewing experiences. I can be working, emails, whatever, and you sort of have him droning on in the background, and when he hits something, you sort of look over. So I'm very exposed to Magic, never touched it. But the nuance to the story is, the first lockdown, I live within walking distance of my brother and my mum, like we're all in the same suburb. My brother and I do jiu-jitsu, so I had playmats. I had jiu-jitsu mats on my lounge room floor. He'd come over and we'd actually train during lockdown. But he plays Hearthstone a lot, so I bought us some Magic pre-con decks to try and get into it. And I knew a little bit about tapping and stuff, but like we couldn't work it out. We didn't enjoy it. But that was like just before I bought the crew box, like 3-4 months before the crew box. I'd bought some Magic pre-cons to try. But TCGs are hard to learn without the in-person experience, unless it's like Hearthstone where you learn it on your PC. So no, the answer is no. I've never played a TCG before. I'd opened some Pokemon packs with my son and my nephews, because it's Pokemon, and I'd opened some Magic precons, but I've watched hundreds of hours of Rudy's content. That's
so now you say that initially it was only collecting, right? But anybody that follows you, and I know that is not where it ended, because you do play, and you are a quite skilled player. You competed in high level events. When did the playing come into play?
My girlfriend at the time, when I'd open boxes, we'd be like watching Netflix. She'd open some stuff with me. She was actually quite into it. She was like, "Can we learn how to play?" Again, we're stuck in lockdown, not much to do. Bought the Monarch precons. We definitely knew how to play. Like, we figured out the rules watching I think DM Armada's video and the official one, and just working our way through. But it wasn't enough info for someone with a zero TCG background. Like, we didn't understand we should probably have D20s and D6s on the board to help. Like, because none of the videos tell you to do that. We didn't do it. You know what I mean? It took the shop owner to tell me, here's a life pad. This is how you track your life. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. We're trying to remember it here. But she would push me to play. Like, she wanted to learn how to play. And to be honest, she was much better at it than I am. Or I was at the time. But it's crazy how life is, huh? She really pressured me to learn how to play. Cause she's like, if you're going to be opening so much, we're going to learn how to play. And we built our own little decks from all the bulk we built. And, she wanted to try. We had a lot of fun, but then she wasn't willing to go to armories and stuff when that all happened. So some of my friends in Sydney have met her, or did meet her at the time, because she turned up to a couple of events with me. She actually came to Jersey with me. She was there.
Okay. Yeah. I remember you there with someone, and
yeah. But yeah, that's she was the reason. Like, she pushed, so I learnt, and then my problem is I learnt, and then I started getting very good and way surpassed her, and she wasn't willing to come to armories. I built her a really good Ira deck, with all the legendaries and stuff to try and get her in, but she just wasn't. We had very different schedules, and that relationship, since it ended right after Jersey. So, but she's 100% the reason I play. But now the community is the reason I play. If that makes sense.
Well, I can understand, kind of having all that bulk around. The itch would, at least for me, I know that the itch would eventually get to me. Like even for me, right? I open a lot of product as well because, well, I need it, and
Mm.
I want to build decks. And there's heroes I do not want to play normally, but then I'm like looking at the cards, right? And all of a sudden I'm like, well, maybe I do want to play this hero. So I can understand that itch coming from just like having all the cards there. So you've learned to play, you got into collecting, and then content creation comes. How did that start for you?
That's a funny story. I bought an alpha box on the Oceanic trade page, which is I'm an admin of now. It's like about 3,000 members, and it's mainly Australia, New Zealand, and a whole bunch of Asian countries that we're much closer to than the US. Also, the currency between like Australia, Singapore makes a lot more sense than to the US. It's like 1-for-1 exchange.
Mhm.
Um, well, the guy bought the alpha. Again, we're talking mid-COVID stuff here, so it's weird. You can't meet people in person. So I'm like, look, man, I'm going to transfer you and I'm going to send an Uber and you're going to give it to the Uber driver and he's going to drop it off. It's like, man, that's crazy. Like, he was nervous. I was nervous. But anyway, he's like, hey, can you record it? And I go, I mean, yeah, I could. He's like, look, I've been sitting on this box since launch. By the way, we're talking like this is at the peak. Like, it was over 4,000 US I paid for the box. Like, it was a big moment for him, but he really wanted to know what was in it.
Mhm.
So, yep, I got a little tripod thing set up. Like, this is not on YouTube because at the time I wasn't planning to do that. And I recorded it and I hit an E-strike and a tunic.
Oh, my
And when I showed him the video, he actually blocked me on Facebook. He
oh
was,
my God.
yeah, because he was like, "Are you really gonna open it?" He's like, "Fuck, I don't know if I want to sell it." Blah blah. You know what I mean? Like, he was obviously I didn't pressure him. He took the money,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
the tunic was more than double, I think, what the box was at the time. So, um, I've been quite lucky, but my luck was at the very start, opening some of this high end product.
Mhm.
But now it's just sheer numbers and attrition. Like,
Yeah.
I hit a tunic for the Dynasty launch stream, but we're talking like 30, 40 alpha boxes in. I haven't hit a heart, but I've hit everything else. And you will if you open a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
It's funny because there's all the highlight moments of like, oh man, like Fluke double legendary box, triple legendary case. It's like, yeah, but do you know how many dud cases I've had in the meantime? You just don't remember those because I open so quick. And that's the content creation started from that video because I was like, you know what? It's silly to spend like thousands of dollars because I'm probably $250,000 into how much I've opened.
Mhm.
That's not counting like I was $250,000 in when I was using Kitchen Table TCG's price tracker. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's I haven't. It's been probably 6 months since then. Um, but it was to document like, hey, if I'm gonna open this amount of stock or this expensive, and that was more like open boosters stuff. I don't think open boosters has anything like he's a quirky character. I like him, but that's not like high production value or anything. It's just the sheer fact that he's opening crazy stuff that most people aren't willing to open.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought, I'll open. And my first few videos, if you go back and watch, I don't speak. It's just the hand cam. It's like it's like pack opening ASMR. Then
Yeah.
people, then
Well,
then you
I'm
get
glad that you
feedback.
decided to start speaking because your wonderful voice. Now, so you do these box breaks. It's a big part of your channel, but you do some other things. But I don't have a lot of insight into box breaking because I don't really do it.
Mm.
Uh, you know, from the behind the scenes aspect, can you kind of give us like an idea of what it's like behind the scenes? Like you're ordering, and I guess like these are for people, right? These
So
boxes.
how do I explain this? So I didn't do box breaks for a while because one of my very first interactions with the community and a very positive one was Chris Sires at Unsealed. So I would, because he took crypto at the time, I was like, oh, this is sick. Like, no PayPal fees, nothing. So I was buying. So I bought. There's some cool like unsealed lore stuff people may not know, but I was very anonymous at the time. Only Chris knew who I was. It would just say Fluke when I'd buy packs with him. There was one time I bought an entire, like pretty much 23 packs of an Arcane Rising first edition break. But then I could see people in the comments were really salty. They're like, oh man, like one person buying all of them, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, Chris, like, just take half of them back. Like, I don't care. Like, resell. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Refund me, let people. Like, I wasn't doing that. I just was excited because I couldn't get that stuff here. And Chris was much cheaper at the time than I could get stuff here. And I hit an eye in that box. Like, it was like karma. Like, I let people participate, but then my packs had the eye in it. So it felt good because I also paid less for my eye. You know what I mean? Like, so, but the reason I didn't sell box breaks was sort of out of loyalty, which was a bit like silly now that I think of it. But I really didn't want to like compete because I liked his product and what he does. But the space is big enough to have 10 Chris Sires now, but he's still like the king of box breaks. Like, if you're going to buy boxes, him and Ian do a great job. They're at every big event. Again, quirky characters. You hear them yelling. I don't know if you were at Worlds. You must have been at Worlds.
I wasn't.
I'm trying to remember if I. You weren't. I'm trying to remember if I ran into you. I'm like, I don't think I ran into Tommy. Look, but he was there. Like, you could hear him, boom, like across the room. Why I do box breaks is the same thing. People keep asking, same as the original video. Like, people like, hey man, like, I watch your streams, but you're always opening for you. And to be honest, like, I've had probably the worst year of my life, especially financially. Like, I'm not broke, but it's been tough. I don't want to keep spending tens of thousands of dollars a month on product just for me. Which actually, there's been some dips in content because I'm like, I don't want to buy a product right now. It's just, like, it's a bad financial decision right now to buy a product. So the box breaks, people want it, and then also helps me run a 5-hour stream where I think the Dynasty release was $12,000 in box breaks alone. Wow. Right? That's pretty cool. Man, I would have done the stream, but I would have had to pay that $12,000. Do you understand what I mean? Like, so it's kind of cool now on release. I don't open much of my own products. Like, people excited, but some people prefer other people opening their packs. It's a weird thing. Like, I like opening my own, but it's a cool experience buying a slot with Chris and then seeing your name pop up and go, hey, babe, like, have a look. Like, we're on. Like, when we hit the eye, it was me and my girlfriend glued to a screen. And we hit the eye and we're like jumping around, which is like shared experience. It's the flesh and blood thing, right? Not just, I wasn't the only person that experienced it in my lounge room. And I might piss some people off with this, but it's how I see box break content, because you asked. It's a weird thing to sit and open all the packs yourself, like no company, because the excitement is weird when you hit like a Fable and it's just you in the room. To me, like, that's not as good as opening it at the LGS or opening it on camera where there's people are going to experience it with me. That's why I do it. So we can all have fun, except I've noticed I save people money because they live vicariously through me. Like, they can't afford to buy Dynasty at launch, but they get to watch 15 cases open. They get to see all the crazy hits. They get to see other people's excitement. And there's a growth element to it where I do believe I sell a lot of product for LSS. Same as Chris, same as Saint Hung. Like, people watching that content get very excited and they get caught up in the hype, and then they go buy product. Yeah.
Well, I totally understand in something that maybe didn't even occur to me, because something that, you know, I do and a lot of the people in the Buzz Discord do is on release, like, well, we're all waiting for our product, you know, checking our you know, tracking and like, when the hell is it getting here? And then, you know, hop in the hangout on Discord, and then we all start opening, and, you know, it is fun to watch, you know, with people, or to have people see that first legendary, that Black Tech Whisperers, which I haven't opened yet, but, you know, stuff like that, which I understand. Now, speaking of content that's probably not as expensive as buying a ton of boxes. Podcasting, which obviously I really enjoy. And this year you teamed up with the Tall Timmy for the podcast Funder. Can you kind of give, I know a lot of the buds out there already listen to Funder, but for those who don't, give us the elevator pitch for that show, which has been a smash hit at this point.
So I got in the game, bought that crew box. The store owner told me that their friend Paul, Tall Timmy, has a channel. I subscribed to it, unsubscribed pretty much instantly because of the energy levels. I'm a little bit more serious and reserved, to be honest. By the way, it felt more like kids content. That's like the way you know what I mean. Like
I can see that.
Anyway, yeah. But I noticed he went to my local stores. So when I got into the game, I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, I want to build a deck and play. Can you put me in touch?" He put me in touch with Blood Rush Gaming, which is an hour drive north of where we live. Paul and I are pretty much neighbors. We live very close to each other, and that's his favorite store where he'd go up every Friday. So I ordered a Dory deck, and then I planned to go up on the Friday. So we carpool pretty much. We used to every Friday carpool up. Me, Tall Timmy, Matteo, who was in the grading video on my channel, if you've ever seen that, the Italian meatball. There's a couple of people that we carpool with and go up. So in that car ride, we just talk. That's pretty much what we do. We got an hour stuck in a car, and it generally will flow. It's mostly Flesh and Blood related, but we'll get into all random kind of stuff. So, and those conversations, like sometimes we're in tears, laughing in the car, and we thought, you know what, like this is the experience. This is Flesh and Blood for us. Is that car ride, the armory, the car ride back, who won, what people playing, and we just sort of formed it off that. As Paul and I are pretty much opposites.
Yes.
And we know people like the accent. We know we're the only podcast that's all in person. We still haven't done a video or audio recording like this one. Not to brag, but like we've managed to keep it in the Flesh and Blood, which is kind of cool. And again, it's like hopefully evergreen content. Like, when Sloop has 1 million subscribers, people will be able to go back and watch an episode of him talking about growing his channel when he had 3,000 subscribers. We got to have the professor on. It's just fun for us. We would sit and talk like that, same as the box breaks. We would do that for free. We would do that for our own fun. It's just sharing it. And again, encouraged by people around us to share it. And we've been able to spotlight people you'd never probably hear about or meet, like Justin, the guy that does, he helped with the winning cosplay in Sydney. He made her sabers. He does altars, which are absolutely insane, foundry altars. We got Jackie from Canberra on. She's like a community builder in our capital city. People that are local, very, very local to us, that you probably, in the US, you have very little chance of ever meeting. Like, she's not someone that, I'm sure she would like to, but she hasn't traveled to a main event. Most of these people may never travel to a major event, But then we've also had Nick Butcher and Hayden Dale, who you see at every major event.
Yeah.
But we get to sit them down. They're literally locals. Like, we see them in armories. They spank us at armories every time. Do you know what I mean? But it's just on my dining room table. That's what we record on. It's literally the kitchen table,
which is awesome, because that is what the game is about. And you guys do really have a great dynamic. As you said, you're opposites, right? You have Paul, who's Paul. It's like you can not only feel his presence from miles away, but you can see him from miles away. He's very tall. And then there's you. You are more reserved and you're relaxed, and it's the nice kind of back and forth, and people were really loving it. I gotta say, and I am one of those people. Now, what does the future of the show hold, and when are you guys flying me down to Australia to be on?
I think next year there is a calling in New Zealand. early next year. It might even be the pre-release. Like, we don't know. I was told it's March, and now seeing Outsiders as March. Maybe it's the pre-release calling, like they did with Uprising. But we'll find out when we find out with everyone else. I don't know for a fact. I'm just now assuming it's a sealed event pre-release. Because they did Sydney, so maybe this one's going to be in New Zealand, which would make sense. It would be awesome. So why I'm saying that is, that's likely some guys from the US and overseas Europe will probably want to come to New Zealand for that. It's a good reason to go.
Oh yeah, the hometown calling.
Now, what's next for Thunder? We're working on a Patreon. We're also talking to a sponsor that will help us get to more events. There's no real plan. Like, we just want to keep it as is. So the next episode is with Philip Mackay, who's like a regular guest now. He's like a third wheel. The poetry on this next episode coming up is the best yet. It's absolutely insane. We were doubled over laughing, like we couldn't contain ourselves. We need to do more, just Paul and I, because I think that's what the show is at the end of the day. But yeah, the reason the sponsor is important is if we can get some of our costs covered to travel to 3, 4, 5 events a year, then that's all our episodes for the year as well. So going to Europe, actually sitting down, like trying to go a week early, sitting down with Alex from Tales of Alex, sitting down with Pablo. So, you know what I mean? Sitting down with some faces people know, but like in our style, and just have a conversation with them. Same thing when we go to New Zealand. We want to get James White on. We want to get some of the team, Newson, Chris Gearing, if we can convince him. So we just want to travel as much as we can to play the game, but also bring the setup with us so we can do the in-person content. That's the goal. And Patreon's going to be tricky because what I'm trying to do for it takes a lot of work, but I want to offer a bit more than just like a tip jar kind of service. But we will have a Patreon up soon. I think people do want to support us, and that's the reason you'll be supporting Thunder Patreon, is literally to help us do those in person. And a big one will be Rudy. I do speak with Rudy. I haven't asked, but I think we could get him on Thunder, which would be monumental. Because again, you don't see him in that scenario, in that setting, the way we had Professor. You don't usually see him in that setting of like an interview style, but more of a conversation. Just, this is how it would be if you're sitting around in your lounge room talking to the Professor. It would have sounded like we had on the podcast. That's the idea.
And I mean, that's really smart. It's a really smart way to do it, especially, I know that you guys banged out like a ton of episodes in San Jose, and gosh, I mean, that would be just incredible to continue to do that, right? So I'm hoping that is the reality for you guys next year, and I'm excited for it. Absolutely. Now, John, this is a part of the show I like to call the fresh faves. I'm going to ask you, we're going to talk a little bit more about Flesh and Blood right now, because it is the reason we're here. I want to know some of your favorite cards. Are you ready?
I am.
First, who is your favorite hero?
Is this a trick question?
I know the answer. Maybe not everybody does. Or maybe
Dorinthia.
You don't even know. Dorinthia. Any reason why?
I mean, aside from her being my first, she was also my first because I asked about how different heroes played, and she seemed like how I want to play, which is, yes, there's a high skill cap, and you get very good at playing her, but also, even if you're a really bad Dorinthia player, you still make your opponents sweat a little bit.
This is as good a reason as any. What is your favorite weapon? I guess it's
definitely the Dawnblade.
There you go.
And I feel like it's also obvious, not just because of Dorinthia, because it's one of the only weapons in the game with a very, very good on hit. The weapon has the on hit. I don't get to play Command and Conquer and pummel like some degenerates out there, but my weapon will get stronger if you don't block it. And I like that. I like that constant pressure of poking. And nowadays, that Dawnblade can get to 6-8 counters consistently into aggro, which is kind of fun. If you ever have pitched one resource, you pitch a red to swing for 13. It's nice, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. And what is it now? You actually have some, I guess, a couple options here. Which is your favorite equipment? This one's not as, well, I guess maybe it is.
Actually,
obvious.
it's flame scale furnace.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Why's that?
Well, I'm definitely a draw my stand. I just haven't put the reps at, like you know, I've played her a lot in blitz to a lot of success actually, and we'll see in skirmish season if I can keep that up. But draw my being able to use red cards efficiently, and then Emperor's come out and people showing you just how broken Furnace can be.
Oh yeah.
So aside from it blocking 2, which is obviously very, very good, it does carry more value than Tunic in a Draconic deck because you can actually get more than one resource every 3 turns, like consistently. So it's very good in Blitz. You can also surprise opponents. It's very hard to track Furnace. Tunic is very obvious, his heads up. Furnace, if I've played a Phantasmaclasm in Blitz, and I've pitched one red and one blue, right?
Yeah.
I can just Furnace another red and hit you. Or if you pop the Phantasmaclasm, I can Furnace, pay for my boots, and then Command and Conquer you right after a Phantasmaclasm. Like it's very hard to, like, it's, I don't think people are adept at actually tracking Furnace and how many resources are floating or coming. And if again you look at some of these Emperor decks where people are getting like 12 resources in a turn off just reds, it's, hey man, the value, look, it's good because also it's very interesting playstyle. It's not like Tunic where it's just dumb and predictable. We have to remember a trigger. It's play a red, ideally pitch 1 or 2 red cards into cards, and then the third one is just, oh, here's a Tumultai, and you pitched 1 red for it. People are like, how? But you can. Like, you can get there.
And it's funny on the flip side of it too, right? The people playing with the Furnace, some people just don't know how to do it. And they can't
that's
get the
why I
value.
like it. That's why I like it. It makes you, like, it's something you have to now build your deck around as well. Like we talk about this on the last Thunder episode with Sloop. It's like, what does your 2-card hand look like? What does your 3-card hand look like? What does a 4-card hand look like? Genuinely speaking, Dromai or Emperor with 4 cards and an arsenal is a little bit crazy when Furnace is up, depending on what you have. Like, you can belittle Minnowism. You can what's that 1 for 3 go again that you get a Phoenix Flame? Like, that one Phoenix Flame that you go fetch can be worth like 4 resources. You just have to combo it off. Yeah.
That's a great answer. That is a great answer. And finally, what is your favorite non-equipment, non-hero? This is like your non-attack actions, attack actions, instance, run-of-the-mill cards in your deck.
Look, if you ask me when I first started, my first Dorinthia deck, I insisted it had Crazy Brews in it.
Well, yeah, they're
And
fun.
unfortunately, it lost me more games than won me. Like, it can definitely on Dorinthia win you the game because of action points is crazy on Dorinthia. But I'd roll 1 too many times and then you just die sometimes because you're using it late game. And that, I don't know, my favorite card. It's a tricky one. I haven't thought about that. I mean, most of them are Dorinthia cards, right? But I would say Chromite. It was my spoiler, and it was hard to immediately tell. But that is, like, I believe, the most powerful invoke.
Oh yeah, and it's so important.
It's 0 cost. Anything that gives you go again is really important, but this gives you action points, which makes you be able to do some wacky stuff. Like, it's one of the only decks that quite consistently you can play a Tome of Final out of Arsenal. It completely avoids Phantasm. Look, that's my favorite non-attack action for sure. It was my spoiler. I don't know if you watched the spoiler video. I carefully opened an Everfest pack and snuck it in, and I put a Tunic as well. Sorry, a Skull Cap, so it looked like just a typical fluke moment, you know. People still don't understand how I did it. I mean, it seems pretty simple to me. I just glued that pack back together.
Yeah.
But it was like every week since then I've realized, oh wait, this card is better than I thought. Like it's very good.
Yeah,
It's also the
really
way you finish off games with Dromai is you want to do like Chromai, Asvalai, Kyloria, like you pitch stack or you remembrance them back. So you block a lot, and that's how people are playing Dromai effectively into Dory anyways. They block a lot, and then at the end of the game they just summon all the zero cost dragons, which are probably the best zero costs in the game. Like Asvalai, Chromai as a combo.
Oh yeah.
You don't need any more cards. And people may not be aware of this, but into Wizard matchup, for instance, Chromai and anything else, you win the game more or less if you have AB, because what you're doing, you'll like Oasis and stuff the Wizard, but you don't actually need to pitch cards. You just Chromai, gain an action point, swing with the other dragon, pass. That's your whole turn. But talk about, that's a 0 hand turn. Is 6 or 7 0 hand. You're blocking for 12 and swinging back for 6 every turn, and Kano can't actually get rid of them. That's the funny thing. Like once you have them out, it's just they're out. Yeah. Chromai is my answer.
That's a great answer, and you know I've lost to it plenty of times, so I am no stranger to Chromai. Now let's talk a little bit about Outsiders, John, which kind of got announced, or it did get announced. Not even kind of. We're going to the pits. People are very excited. Are you excited?
I am not excited yet. I'm very like, oh, there's probably not gonna be warrior cards in it, right? That's how I think. Although there's probably a chance, right?
Yeah.
I try to remember where and when it was said that there's no adult Kasai coming. I think it's been confirmed that there's no adult versions of heroes that are just young. Like we won't see an adult Cave Dane. We probably won't see an adult Shiana. Like I think they actually confirmed that recently. Like they have no intention of like breaking the nomenclature that they've created on purpose. The reason I'm not excited, it's actually far away. Like I think they posted it because there's not going to be any news, and they want to like close the office for Christmas and chill.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But end of March actually is more wait than I thought. I thought we'd get a set in February, so it's March, and then the next thing I'm excited about is ProQuest.
Oh yeah,
and then I'll be starting to get pumped. Also, I'm in the content creator program, so the second I get that spoiler email is when I start getting, if I get one. Obviously, I don't assume I'll get one, but so far I've been lucky enough. When I get that email saying, "Hey, you've been invited. Do you accept?" I'll get a bit more excited.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bad answer, I know, but it's true.
I mean, it is so far away. It really is. The only thing, you know, because we don't really know a whole lot about it, right? And we probably won't know. I think they said January 10th we'll get like real information.
Yes.
So until then, we can only speculate. So I thought it would be fun to just speculate on what classes we're gonna get because that's the big question on everybody's minds right now. Because you know we don't know what kind of talent it's gonna be. We don't know anything like that. But so to me, the things that I looked at when I looked at Outsiders, what classes could we get? So you kind of have to look at theme for the pits, right? And then also how long we've waited for a new version of a class. So currently, mech, we haven't had a new mech, adult mech, since Arc, right? Since Arcane Rising. Obviously, we've only had Dash outside Data Doll. And then we haven't had Brute or Warrior since Monarch. Right, we had Bolton and Levia in Monarch, but we have not had a new adult of either of those since then. So that would lead me to believe that those are the most due. Would you agree?
So let's go back to Uprising because that was the logic used then, and it was pretty accurate, right? We didn't have a second wizard, ninja, or illusionist, and we got all three.
Yes.
But it wouldn't have made sense. It wouldn't have made sense to put a mech in Uprising. Warrior made a lot of sense, but it was a 3-hero set. Like,
Yeah.
and also we did have a second Warrior, but like Warrior probably makes sense in most areas. But I think, Warrior's like a Solana thing, right? So far, it's like all light. Even Dorinthia's like hinted at being a light warrior, like even though she doesn't have the talent. I think you're right. Ranger's probably the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Although we have Lexi, Azalea. Look, I hope the only reason I hope we get Ranger is so that Ranger gets a full suite of support, not because I think we need a new Ranger. I think Azalea is kind of good now. I say kinda because I also think the problem is not enough people play her at a high level. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's same as Dorinthia. I'm not that good at Dorinthia. She's very underrepresented. Like, if a lot of the pro players were playing Dorinthia, you'd see some crazy shit. Like,
Oh yeah,
you would. You'd see some very good builds. You'd see some pitch stacking, which I don't do. I just play off the top mainly. But yes, to answer your question, I think look, there's been some sort of confirmation it's a 4-hero set already because of pre-orders for pre-cons or sleeves was hero 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's something along those lines. Which again, that was done for Uprising, and people were correct. It was 3, and we were like, nah, there's got to be a 4th. They're tricking us. I don't know if you remember that, but people kept assuming there's like a 4th hero coming. There wasn't, and the best bit of proof was the distributor stock numbers. They only had 3, not 4. That was the proof in the end. Brute would be cool because it's an underplayed class anyway. That's sort of what excites me the most was, although I absolutely detest Fi, it's good to see ninjas in the meta at all.
For sure.
Right? Because Katsu's still not enough. Ranger is the same. But yeah, if you had to look at it that way, I hope the 4th class is Warrior. I hope it's like... But also Assassin would make a lot of sense. I'd like to see 2 sets in a row. I'm not against that at all.
Yeah.
Because still, Assassin probably has the lightest card pool in the game right now. So a full set with another draftable Assassin that also helps Arachne, because the Arachne is just a generic Assassin. So anything the new set has... no, look, I don't know, Assassin or Warrior as the 4th one would be great. But what did you say? You said Brute, Mech, and
Warrior. Warrior is also kind of due, right?
Warrior's
it's been the longest. So
yeah.
What Assassin makes a lot of sense, right? From the pits, and so does Rain or Azalea. I don't know if I think maybe Azalea was supposed to be an assassin of some sorts that kind of shot bows. But Azalea's kind of a no-brainer. It's where she's from. Maybe they kind of get the star of the show treatment. We get some Ranger support, like you said, that we kind of need. Mech is interesting because we just got a lot of really good mech stuff in Dynasty, and Dash is looking probably the best that she ever has. But if it's a talented mech, things kind of get switched up there. And I agree with you. With these underrepresented heroes like Warrior, Brute, Ranger, for the health of the game, I think you want to service those classes, right? Because you get a lot of people, and I play all kinds of things, but I am very much a Brute player, right? And when very much a Leviathan player, right? And in Dynasty, Leviathan didn't really get anything. Maybe Berserk's okay, right?
1 card's not enough.
Exactly.
Because other classes that got 10 good cards, you didn't come up to their level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People forget that. Like, Warrior got some good cards, but actually looking at the set, we didn't get a lot of support.
Yeah, and
sorry, Jubil is crazy good support. That's actually that's the hit of the set, right? Is Jubil, because it's fucking great. But other than that, everything else was like a side grade. But then Mech got like Harpoon. What the heck is going on? Why is this brainless aggro mechanologist forcing me to block now? What's going on?
And last week I had Josh Lau on, who's a very prominent
I know Josh.
Bolton and Dorinthia player, and he made a great point. It's like in Dynasty, Warrior got stuff that kind of widened the amount of cards you can play in Warrior, but
Yeah.
it didn't get deeper, right?
No, we didn't get. Yeah.
And it's a great point, and I think a new Warrior would be great, and I'm sure we're at least this year we have to get one. But
Well, look, the way, if you start looking, like dig in, and the new dagger,
mhm.
it works okay on Dorinthia. It's a bit annoying, but it's not the power level of Dawnblade. Like the decks, it doesn't feel like it. It lets you beat decks that usually you struggle against, like Dromai. You'll beat it more consistently with Saber Dagger, I believe. But you don't. I don't like playing like a whole deck just to beat one meta deck. Like that's how Prism felt, and that's how Starvo felt. Is I had to have a specific plan into the decks that I don't like that.
Yeah.
What I do like, which I'm a bit of an advocate for, is I want to see archetypes where I have my Dorinthia deck. I can pretty much swap the hero card and have a new deck, rather than swap my deck to have a new deck. If that makes sense, like the body of the deck. So it would be cool that you play Reiner and you have a pretty, like you have your 80 cards. Swapping Reiner to female Reiner is suddenly an entirely different playstyle, but a very similar deck consistency. But instead of every time you ban it, and every time you discard it,
something else happens, like a buff to your next
maybe
attack
you
or
lose,
something
maybe
like that.
they lose life, or you gain a life, like whatever. It just becomes, into aggro, I play her because, and now obviously you can't sideboard, I understand, but if the whole meta shifts, you can still play Brute. You just have to pick the other Brute. But it's not like Dorinthia and Bolton where the decks are nothing the same. Like you cannot play, they literally don't share two cards. Like it's Courage or Blade Hold. That's what we share, and refractions. Like, but armor is irrelevant. Like armor is actually the point. Armor is fun to switch and change the deck. Like play Tunic Dorinthia instead of Courage. That's fun because I can keep my deck the same pretty much. But you get what I mean. I'd like to see like a warrior that, or a brute where you don't have to, like again, Levia and Reiner are very different decks. Like you can't. They share a little bit of but it's not enough to make them similar.
And it's just not fun to build, because you can build Levia like Reiner, but it's just not fun to do so. So, and
people that do that, I always say, why don't you just play Reiner?
Yeah. Well, it's like it's like, oh, we get Husk and we get Shadow Puppetry. Yeah, but like if you're gonna do that, just go all in on Levia.
Just quad into him and kill them.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could pretty much surmise that. I mean, myself, I really want to see Brute. Obviously, a new kind of Brute. Kind of see where they go with Brute in as they explore that class, because it's very much the RNG class, right? And how much can they change that?
I love it.
State? Yeah. And how, like, the design space there is there to explore. And so I'm hoping for a new Brute. What are you hoping for? Obviously,
so
Warrior,
Told to me posted a clickbait video. I don't know if you caught that.
I did.
I think he's wrong, but I do think there's a chance of a new class in the set for sure. Now, first of all, the art reminds me of Everfest art, which had the tri-shot art, which everyone was like, "Oh, new Ranger with a mechanologist helmet." Like that's purely a character, a card art. Yeah. I think this crazy cool art is they're very. I think it's obvious in Fab when it's a hero card.
Yeah.
And like when they did the Icelander reveal, they just they're like, "Here's Icelander." Like, you know what I mean? There's no like, it's a hero. I don't think that's a hero in the card, but I think this set will allow for something like an alchemist. And yes, I agree with Paul, where like all these potions and Everfest and cash in, cash out and gold, like you couldn't have done an alchemist with a lot of potions and talismans if you didn't first print gold. Now that it's been printed, it's a good chance we see, like if you're going to see alchemist in a set, this might be the set you see like a playable potion slinging. Like also they just showed us a mechanic where you put all these items in and you construct a mechanoid on them. An alchemist could be blue, red, yellow potion turns into something crazy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Or weapon. Like, so that's the kind of thing. There's a lot of cool mechanics that already hint, like the Runeblade cards, which no one's going to use yet, but is hinting at something, is pitch a non-attack and an attack and do something. Like, that's relevant. Alchemist could easily play like the color of the potion does something. What are the other ones? The lantern cards reveal the top. If it's a red, do this. If it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's all this synergistic stuff that. So I would assume if we see a new class, it's alchemist in this set. Even the that's why I'm going back to the art that they put up this pirate mech looking, right? That could
Yeah.
easily be an alchemist. Like, why does an
Oh,
alchemist
yeah.
have to be in like a lab coat? You know what I mean? That's a proper
Mhm.
Pitts alchemist right there. A street chemist.
Yeah, it looks like everybody's making the same joke. It's like this is the Mad Max, the Flesh and Blood set. It's that's what an alchemist from Mad Max would look like. So very exciting. I mean, alchemist, yeah, that'd be cool. And and I know we both want Brute and Warrior, so hopefully we get what we want, John. Now I got a
I would
couple.
play a Brood in CC to be. I'm tempted to try Rhino in CC. I just know it's backdoory stuff. It's just not S tier,
Yeah, that's the problem with it. Yeah, you might as well just play the Dromai because you get the. I mean, like that deck has some legs. So,
It definitely
um,
does.
I guess some quick listener questions before we say goodbye, John.
Hmm.
First one comes from Pat Shaw from the Combat Chain. He asks, "How long have you trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Seems to be a niche of martial arts and TCGs. Do you think there's a correlation? And does one help you be better at the other?"
Pat, thanks for the question. It's a bit of a sad story. I've been training for 5 years, but in the last 2 have trained nearly none. I have a pretty bad back injury. Like, I'm in chronic pain. People don't know that, but I genuinely have pain every day from my back. I'm working on it. I'm trying to fix that.
Mhm.
It's also a reason why I play Fab. I've told this to my local friends. If my back wasn't crap, I wouldn't play Fab. I'd be doing jiu-jitsu 5 times a week. Like, that's the real passion. No, I wouldn't now, but I
Yeah,
never would have had time. I would never have had time for content creation and stuff because I really love jiu-jitsu. I was competing. I finally won a gold medal just before I got injured too, which was anyway. Now, the correlation. I don't know if there is one, but does it help? The reason I got into it's funny, right? The reason I got into jiu-jitsu was my brother used to be the fat brother, and he lost like 20 kilos, so 40, 50 pounds doing
Oof.
jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And I was playing Rainbow Six Siege semi-professionally. But I was like just turned 30, and my reflexes, like, I know I can do something, like especially in a clutch situation. It's like you versus 3 opponents. That's where I shine. I don't panic under stress, so I'm very, very good in a clutch situation. Like, if you're ever in a car accident or something, I'm the type of person you want with you. I literally don't blink. Like, it's just, maybe I'm a psychopath, but I don't. My fight or flight doesn't trigger off like much. So, but it wasn't working. Like, my reflexes were slowing down. So I did some research, and basically you can't improve your reflexes, um, aside, like, because they sort of, whatever natural reflexes you have slow down after you're 18 till you die. That's basically what happens. But there's things that slow down your reflexes more than your natural ability. One of them is like actual health and weight and things like that. So just exercising is how you get your best hand-eye coordination. I believe this also plays into playing Fab at a professional level. If you're not fit, you're not playing at your optimal. You might just be crazy good, but if
Yeah.
you start actually training and eating right before Worlds, or just in general, your brain capacity will increase. Your memory gets better. Like, a lot of things happen. So I got into jiu-jitsu to improve my my professional gaming, and then
Hey.
I quit gaming. Like, I stopped playing at a high level because jiu-jitsu is good for you physically.
Mhm.
It's way more competitive because it's like it's actually you, like, not you behind a computer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's the whole flesh and blood community thing. Like, you can't train jiu-jitsu yourself at home
Yeah.
eating Cheetos. You know what I mean? Like, you have to turn up. You have to go. You have to actually have someone on top of you sweating. You have to figure out how to be calm under pressure and how to solve problems on the fly. Um, it's very, very good. It's very good. It's not a typical martial arts because there's a lot of martial arts that you could sit at home with a punching bag and practice and sharpen. Jiu-jitsu really requires another human being, and that's why it's why I'd recommend it. It's even just the endorphins you get by, like, when I say body contact, I'm not trying to say this in like a sexual way or something stupid, but you're physically, like, you bond with a lot of people. You learn boundaries when you roll with girls. You learn boundaries with guys. You like, someone has to trust you to, like, literally
Yeah.
like, be all over them physically. And it teaches you some very good skills in life. Like, under pressure is good, but also just boundaries and respect. And you need them as much as they need you. The ego, like, people talk about the ego death in jiu-jitsu. You can't have an ego in jiu-jitsu. Like, everyone that does quits. Like, if you cannot fathom that you are going to lose. Man, we got a girl, Wendy. She's a pro jiu-jitsu athlete. She's under 50 kilos, man. I've never beat her once. Not even close. Like, anyone else in the world is 50 kilos. Most men can ragdoll them. It doesn't matter. But, like, in the jiu-jitsu rule set, there's no fucking way. There's no way. She's very good. And your ego can't hang around when this tiny Asian girl is just beating you up consistently. Like, you're like, well, I guess I need to do this more often and get better, you know? But sorry, I've never even been close to beating her, and I'm 5 years in. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no... She's just better.
Well, I mean, in a way, that's a correlation to, I mean, this might be a stretch, but it's a correlation to flesh and blood. It's very skill intensive, and the better player will beat you regardless, like, most of the time. And yeah.
Well, people make fun of me for constantly bringing jiu-jitsu up on Thunder, but there is a lot of correlation. And if you want, like, genuinely, if you want your flesh and blood to get better, jumping into something like jiu-jitsu actually will help a lot. It will help, like, you will not get nervous at a final table, let me tell you. When you've been at a competition with 100 people watching you and you're losing, and there's a guy that's 20 kilos heavier on top of you trying to kill you, and then you find a way to win, flesh and blood's nothing.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Michael Hamilton's in front of you, you're like, buddy, in a real fight, I can kill you. Let's play some card games. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't care. I'm kidding, Michael.
Yeah, Michael. Yeah,
Never fight Michael.
Never. He's just such a sweet man.
Dude, I'm so happy he's the world champion. Like, I love a lot of flesh and blood players. I was rooting for many of them, but he is humble and nice and friendly and unassuming. And zero ego. Like, it could have been anyone and I would have been happy, but it's very good that that's our first, and hopefully repeat. Very happy that's the representative of the game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Though, part of me would think it would be hilarious. He shows up to the next Pro Tour, sunglasses, huge
he should.
on him.
We'll get him Conor McGregor's, like, mink coat, you know what I mean? Just shirtless with a mink coat, Michael. Let's go.
Next, we have two questions from Coppola, who asks, do you think there will be a Pro Tour / Worlds in Australia? And what are some tourist activities you recommend he should do or anyone should do if there were to be one?
I don't think we'll ever get a Pro Tour or Worlds in Australia. It doesn't make sense as much as I'd want to. It's a tiny player population. Like, 99% of the players would have to fly in, versus if you put it in Singapore, it's, let's say, 95%, but then it's also more accessible to a lot more places, right? So I think Australia wouldn't get a Pro Tour or a Worlds. I'd like to see callings once or twice a year. I think that should be doable. But I think Asia Pacific or Oceania's looked at as one thing. So I think you'll see Singapore. And I also think you're more likely to see, like, 10-year anniversary Worlds in New Zealand. Makes sense. Especially if Flesh and Blood's a big enough company to start... like, every player that's invited gets, like, a $500 voucher to help with travel, that kind of thing. Like, I think they can get to that point. I think Magic used to do it. I think Pokemon still does it. There's games that they're making enough money that the $1 million prize pool for the year is also, there's another $1 million that's just to bring players in. Because then New Zealand makes a lot of sense. But why Australia when New Zealand's... You know what I mean? Like, why would you? Now, New Zealand's smaller, but... But again, you can have the whole... you're there. All the LSS
Mhm.
people are there. That makes a better event. I mean, look, if we ever get one in Australia, I'd be very happy. But we need to grow our player base by like 10x before I think that would be on the
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
horizon.
Well, I hope he gets there, but yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, New Zealand, it's probably more in the cards,
But
but
again, New Zealand, they'd have to have a pretty big reason to do it in
yeah,
New Zealand because it's so far away.
it is. It
Like
really is.
for 99.99% of the flesh and blood players, which I think like 80% are in the US, definitely over 60% of the players worldwide are in the US. You
Mhm.
still have to think about that. Like it's way more likely to go US Europe, US Europe, like that kind of. They're more likely to do that because that's catering for the 99% of the player base than throwing worlds into Australia, which again you'll see way less representation of high end players. They still have to cater to that, I think. What was the second question?
Oh, well, I mean, it had to do with tourist activities. Well, if there's not going to be
In
any,
Australia. No,
yeah.
like again, come for a calling. Like the Uprising World Premiere in Sydney was bigger than Spain. We had
Hmm.
more players, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of Asian players came, a lot of New Zealand players came. Like if you're gonna come to an event, come to like the Outsiders. If they do a like a calling pre-release thing, definitely come. Also, because it's not Worlds, you have more time to do touristy things. There's less
Yeah.
pressure, Coppola. Like if you come for Worlds, like people did when they went to Cali, you're less likely to have like you're stressed. You know, you're there trying to win.
Yeah.
um, but honestly, I haven't done a lot of tourist stuff myself in Australia. But if you come to Sydney, there's the Harbour Bridge, there's the Opera House. You can actually climb the Harbour Bridge. It's probably one of the best experiences in Sydney. It's a little pricey, but you get to climb all the way to the top of the Harbour Bridge and take photos. That's like an experience you can do. Um, but yeah, Sydney, Australia's a big place. Like a lot of the like Ayers Rock and Barrier Reef, they're all very far apart. So
Yeah.
you can't like you can't do a lot in one day. Yeah.
It's a huge country, and I don't, I don't think like even sometimes, I watch a lot of cricket, and like I know that like the Big Bash, right? You got teams all over, and then there's like, oh yeah, there's like a 6 hour flight for this
Yes.
team to get to the other. I'm like, geez.
Well, it's the same landmass as the USA,
Yeah, yeah.
but a fraction of the population. Like it's very empty in comparison. So you can't like. There's not that many major cities if you try and drive around. Like if you go on a
Hmm.
12-hour drive, you'll pass one major city and a lot of little towns. Well, in the US, I think you drive 12 hours, but you'll probably be able to stop at 10. Like you can stop in a major city, find a hotel. Like you can cut up the trip or actually do a lot of tourist stuff on the way. In
Hmm.
Australia, it's a little different. It's very, very spread out.
Yeah.
But
Um. Well, I hope to get down there one day and hang out with you, John, and we'll hang out at some events this year or this coming year, I hope, and
oh, for sure.
I do want to thank you for coming on, my friend. It was a blast, and I appreciate you waking up a little early and doing it. Um, can you please plug anything you need to plug? And yeah,
Well, Funder, Funder, on YouTube. We're also on Spotify and all the other things except for Apple Podcasts. We're at 620 subs, so hoping to reach 1,000 soon. I mean, we always get more views than subs, which is a nice sign, but that also means people aren't subscribed. And of course, Fluke and Box is my channel. If you want box breaks, I have my own little shop, but go check out the channel and you can find all the links from there. That's pretty much it. I would shout out Fab Twitter. I think it's more people should be on there. I like that more than the Facebook groups. It's generally positive and interactive. So find me on Twitter. You find most of us on Twitter, the content creators. That is, if you don't have Twitter, it's
absolutely.
a good reason to get it. Just follow like the Fab stuff, and it becomes a very wholesome, Fab orient. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very good on its own. I don't follow anybody but Fab people on there, which is what I'd recommend you do if you don't have Twitter already. That's about
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah. Well, you guys can all continue to find me on Twitter as well. It is a great spot. I'm at Fresh Buds Pod. If you're listening on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Got to get those subscribers up. I'm going to do a full Levia cosplay at 500 subscribers, and I will regret it. And what else? If you're listening on any like Spotify or anything like that, leave it a rate, like a review. All that stuff helps. Please go check out all of John's stuff. Funder, his Fluke and Box. It's all great content. Now, John, I know you got to go, but I always end the show talking a little bit about food. What's something you're really enjoying eating right now?
Your mom's now.
Whoa!
Whoa! Came out of nowhere. Man, what am I enjoying eating right now? Okay, that's great. I went on a date last night, and went to a Japanese place. I don't usually like Japanese food because I don't like raw seafood, right? But they had like the nice Wagyu steak, so I'm like, let's go here. She ordered beef tongue.
Oh, interesting.
And I tried it, and it wasn't terrible.
Okay.
It was a nice restaurant. Let me put it out there. Like the nicer the restaurant, sometimes you're a bit more open to exotic stuff you try. Tasted like a mixture of very nice steak and liver, like the texture of like eating liver, which is not my thing. But I was there. You go. I was very adventurous yesterday.
There you go. Well,
I've been enjoying eating beef tongues.
Yeah, well, I'm going to log off after this and grab some beef tongue for dinner. Thank you all for hanging out with us. And, we got the holidays coming up, and I hope everybody has a nice holiday. And everybody have a great week.